Darius Mitchell, the successful founder of a luxury store, embarks on a personal mission to uncover troubling rumors about customer treatment. Disguised as an ordinary shopper, he discovers a pattern of exclusion driven by a senior employee, Mason Turner. Confronting Mason, Darius decides to terminate his contract and appoints Sarah Moore as interim manager to lead a transformation. With a renewed focus on inclusivity and respect, the store begins to change, reflecting the values Darius had always intended. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. Darius Mitchell stood resolutely before the flagship luxury store he had painstakingly built from the ground up, a shining beacon of his success against the backdrop of the dazzling New York City skyline. However, tonight the store's bright, inviting windows and the pristine, polished marble that greeted every visitor seemed distant and hollow. Draped in a simple hoodie and jeans, Darius felt the burden of something far heavier than the fabric draped over his shoulders, a profound sense of suspicion and unease. Whispers of discontent had reached him, disturbing accounts of customers being mistreated and dismissed for reasons contrary to the core values his brand was meant to uphold. Adjusting his hood slightly, Darius glanced at his reflection in the glass facade. To any passerby, he appeared as nothing more than an ordinary pedestrian, inconspicuous and far removed from the billion-dollar empire that bore his name. This evening wasn't about the wealth or the prestige associated with his name. It was deeply personal. His father's image flashed vividly in his mind, his father's quiet strength. The countless stories of unspoken indignities endured in places reminiscent of this very store. This investigation was more than a duty. It was a tribute to the man who had shaped him into the person he had become. As he pushed open the door to the store, he was greeted by the familiar, heady scent of leather mingled with the subtle aroma of high-end cologne. Soft jazz played in the background, and the entire space exuded an air of exclusive refinement. Darius took in the meticulously arranged displays, a testament to elegance and modern design. Yet, despite the polished exterior, he sensed an underlying discord. The employees moved with a detached efficiency, their eyes barely acknowledging customers who didn't conform to a certain image. "Good evening," a gentle voice called out to him, and Darius turned to see a young saleswoman offering a professional smile. "Can I help you find something today?" Before Darius could respond, Mason Turner emerged from behind her, his presence commanding and unwelcoming. Sarah Mason's voice was curt and unyielding. "I'll take over from here." Sarah stepped aside, her gaze betraying a mix of apology and discomfort. Mason wasted no time with pleasantries. Standing with his arms crossed and a slight smirk curling his thin lips, he scrutinized Darius's casual attire with a dismissive air. "We're closing soon," Mason said with an edge of condescension. "If you're looking for something specific, you'd better hurry." Darius suppressed the sharp retort that rose to his lips. "I'm in search of a coat," he replied with controlled calm. "A black trench coat, something from the high-end collection." Mason's eyebrow arched in skepticism, his gaze briefly flicking disdainfully over Darius's hoodie, as if the words high-end were incongruous with the man before him. "Our top collection is located in the back," Mason said dismissively. "But given your attire, I'd say it's probably outside your budget." For a fleeting moment, Darius Mitchell contemplated revealing his identity to Mason Turner, yet he quickly dismissed the idea. This wasn't about self-importance or proving a point. It was about understanding the true extent of the issues plaguing his store. He needed to witness firsthand how deeply the problem ran and how entrenched the attitudes were. "I'll take a look anyway," Darius said, his voice steady, masking the storm of emotions roiling beneath. Mason's response was a shrug, and he turned to lead Darius further into the store. As they moved deeper into the elegant space, they passed meticulously arranged displays of finely tailored suits and rows of designer shoes. Each piece was positioned with precision, designed to project an aura of exclusivity and luxury. Darius noticed that Mason made no effort to engage or explain the items they passed. There were no sales pitches, no attempts to make the customer feel valued, only a palpable silence punctuated by Mason's unmistakable air of disdain. As they reached the back of the store, Mason gestured with a lazy flick of his hand toward a rack of coats. "There," he said dismissively, "you'll find what you're looking for." Darius's fingers traced the fabric of a coat, a sumptuous wool with impeccable stitching, precisely the quality he had mandated for his brand. However, the price tag conspicuously turned outward and seemed designed to send a clear, derogatory message. He glanced at Mason, who remained rooted in place, his eyes narrowed with barely concealed contempt. "This one looks good," Darius said, pulling the coat from the rack. "I'll take it." Mason's lips twisted into a smirk, his expression dripping with condescension. "Are you sure you don't want to check the price first?" he asked, his tone laden with sarcasm. "It's a bit steep for casual shoppers." Darius's grip on the coat tightened, his resolve hardening in the face of Mason's overt prejudice. This situation transcended Mason's attitude. It spoke to a broader, deeply ingrained pattern of behavior. The weight of his father's memory pressed heavily upon him, a stark reminder of the silent indignities his father had endured in similar situations. How many times had his father been dismissed or judged based on appearance in places just like this? "There's no need," Darius replied, his voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of steely determination. "Ring it up." Mason blinked in surprise, momentarily caught off guard. For a brief moment, uncertainty flickered across his face before being replaced by his usual sneer. "All right then," he muttered, turning on his heel and heading toward the register. As Darius followed, he caught Sarah's eye, the young saleswoman who had greeted him earlier. She offered a small, hesitant smile, a silent acknowledgement of the situation she felt powerless to change. Darius returned the gesture with a subtle nod, recognizing her empathy despite her limited ability to intervene. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 1 below to let me know that Amit are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. At the register, Mason punched in the price with mechanical efficiency, his gaze occasionally darting toward Darius as if anticipating him to reconsider. Darius handed over his card, observing the flicker of disbelief in Mason's eyes as the payment was processed. "Enjoy your coat," Mason said, his voice flat and devoid of any genuine warmth or meaning. "I will," Darius replied, sliding the coat over his shoulders and turning toward the door. Just before leaving, he paused, his hand resting on the door handle. Without turning back, he added quietly, "I'll be back tomorrow." The silence that followed was thick with tension, the unspoken words hanging heavily in the air. Darius stepped out into the crisp night air, his heart weighed down with disappointment. The rumors he had heard were now undeniable truths. The reality was right before him. As he walked through the vibrant streets of New York, the coat felt increasingly burdensome, a tangible symbol of the work that lay ahead. His thoughts drifted back to his father, to the stories of quiet suffering and humiliation he had endured. Darius's determination solidified. This issue extended beyond Mason or even this single store. It was emblematic of a systemic problem that needed addressing. The next day, Mason would face him again, not as a mere shopper, but as the man who owned the empire Mason believed he could belittle and control. The confrontation was only the beginning of a much larger struggle for change and justice. Mason had earlier remarked, "I was thinking about the brand's reputation. That's all you need to understand. Our clientele expects a certain standard." Darius's eyes narrowed, his voice steady yet laced with intensity. "And you think that standard excludes people who don't fit into your narrow view of what wealth and status look like?" Mason's hands trembled as he searched for the right words, his voice cracking under the pressure. I thought he began, but the words fell away, failing to form a coherent defense. His mind raced, trying to grasp any semblance of justification, but the weight of Darius's disappointment bore down on him with crushing force. The room seemed to contract around him, each second stretching into an eternity as Darius's piercing gaze held him in place. Darius leaned back in his chair, the movement deliberate and steeped in authority. His voice, though softer, was no less potent, carrying a gravity that seemed to seep into every corner of the room. "You thought wrong. I envisioned this brand as a beacon of inclusivity, a symbol of success for everyone, no matter their appearance or background. But what you've done is pervert that vision into something exclusionary and poisonous." The frustration in Darius's voice was palpable, the disappointment in his eyes deepening as he spoke. His words were not merely a rebuke but a profound disillusionment, a betrayal of everything he had worked to build. Mason's composure shattered as he shifted in his seat, his confidence crumbling under the weight of Darius's accusations. "Mr. Mitchell, please," he implored, his voice trembling. "I've been loyal to this company for years. This was just one mistake." The desperation in his plea was clear, the effort to cling to his past achievements in the face of overwhelming criticism evident. He was grasping at the remnants of his self-respect, trying to salvage something from the wreckage of his career. One mistake. Darius's voice cut through Mason's defense like a blade, harsh and unforgiving. "This is not about a single error. I've been hearing complaints for months, stories of customers being turned away, staff mistreated, all because you've taken it upon yourself to decide who is worthy of entering my stores. This isn't a matter of loyalty. This is about you tainting the very core values on which this company was founded." Each word from Darius seemed to strike at Mason's heart, a relentless barrage of condemnation that left him reeling. Mason's breathing grew heavy, the realization of his failure sinking in with a suffocating finality. I can change," he said desperately, his voice cracking with emotion. "Just give me a chance to prove it. I'll do better. I can fix this." The desperation in his voice was raw and palpable, a last-ditch effort to hold onto a dream that was slipping through his fingers. His eyes, once filled with arrogance, were now brimming with pleading vulnerability. Darius shook his head slowly, a gesture filled with finality and sorrow. It's too late for that. The finality in Darius's tone was unmistakable, the weight of his words crashing down on Mason like a tidal wave. There was no room for negotiation, no space for redemption. The decision had been made, and there was no turning back. Mason's eyes widened in horror as the gravity of Darius's words fully registered. What? What are you saying? His voice was barely above a whisper, a fragile thread of hope unraveling before him. The disbelief in his eyes was a stark contrast to the cold certainty in Darius's demeanor. I'm saying that your time with this company is over, Darius declared, his voice resolute and unyielding. Effective immediately, your franchise contract is terminated. The finality of Darius's pronouncement echoed in the room, a verdict that sealed Mason's fate with a crushing blow. The weight of the decision was palpable, each word driving home the irrevocable nature of his loss. Mason's face went ashen, the blood draining from his cheeks. Terminated. You can't do this. Mr. Mitchell, I've given everything to this company. I've built that store with my own 2 hands. The anguish in his voice was palpable, a heart-wrenching plea for mercy from someone who felt utterly betrayed by the very institution he had devoted his life to. You built it on a flawed foundation, Darius said softly, almost regretfully, and now it's crumbling. The quiet sadness in Darius's voice underscored the depth of his disillusionment. His words were not just an indictment of Mason's actions, but a lament for the ideals that had been corrupted. Mason's mouth opened and closed, the words failing him as he struggled to come to terms with the gravity of the situation. Please, he whispered, his voice a mere shadow of its former self. Just give me one more chance. The desperation in his plea was heart-wrenching, a final attempt to salvage a semblance of dignity from the ruins of his career. Darius stood, his height and presence casting a formidable shadow over Mason. I gave you every chance. When I walked into that store yesterday, you showed me exactly who you are. The finality in Darius's tone was absolute, leaving no room for further argument or appeal. Without another word, Darius turned and walked toward the door, leaving Mason to grapple with the overwhelming weight of his downfall. Mason remained seated, his head bowed in defeat, the reality of his situation sinking in with a crushing finality. His career, once filled with promise, was now unraveling before his eyes. As Darius stepped into the hallway, Lisa looked up from her desk, her face etched with concern. How did it go? It's done, Darius replied, his voice subdued and reflective. His mind was already racing ahead to the next steps, the weight of the day's decisions heavy on his shoulders. Call Sarah Moore. She'll be the interim manager. I need someone who truly understands what we're about. Later that afternoon, Sarah Moore sat nervously in the same chair Mason had occupied earlier. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. She had long suspected that something was amiss with the store. Mason's attitude had poisoned the atmosphere, but she had never felt empowered to address it. Now, sitting across from Darius Mitchell, she was filled with a mix of fear and anticipation, uncertain of what lay ahead. Darius regarded her with a softer expression than he had shown Mason, his eyes reflecting a mixture of empathy and resolve. Sarah, as you probably know, I visited the store yesterday. Sarah nodded, her brow furrowed with concern. Yes, sir, I heard about it. And I watched you, Darius continued, his voice carrying a tone of genuine appreciation. You were the only one who seemed to genuinely care about the customers. You greeted me warmly when I arrived and did your best to make me feel welcome. The sincerity in Darius's words was a stark contrast to the harshness he had directed at Mason, and Sarah felt a surge of emotion as she processed the unexpected praise. Sarah bit her lip, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. I just do my job, Mr. Mitchell. You do more than that, Darius said firmly, his voice imbued with conviction. Mason is no longer with the company, and the store needs new leadership. I'd like you to take over as interim manager. The weight of Darius's offer hung in the air, a mixture of opportunity and responsibility that left Sarah momentarily stunned. Sarah blinked, the gravity of the situation taking a moment to sink in. Me? But I'm just the assistant manager. I'm not sure if I'm ready for. You're ready, Darius interrupted, his tone leaving no room for doubt. You understand what this company stands for better than anyone else in that store. I need someone I can trust to rebuild it. Can I count on you? The trust in Darius's eyes was palpable, and Sarah felt a surge of both anxiety and determination as she contemplated the challenge before her. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 2 below to let me know we're still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. Sarah looked down at her hands, her mind racing with a flood of thoughts and emotions. This was the opportunity she had always dreamed of, Yet the enormity of the responsibility was overwhelming. She glanced back up at Darius, who was watching her with an intensity that was both reassuring and daunting. The decision she faced was not just a career move, but a chance to restore the integrity of the store and its values. "Yes," she said quietly, her voice gaining strength as she continued. "Yes, you can count on me." Darius nodded, rising from his chair with a sense of finality. "Good. I'll have my team assist with the transition. There's a lot of work ahead, but I believe you're the right person for the job." The certainty in Darius's voice was a beacon of hope amidst the uncertainty, and Sarah felt a renewed sense of purpose as she prepared to take on the challenge. As Sarah stood to leave, Darius paused, his expression thoughtful. "One more thing. I want you to lead a comprehensive retraining program for the staff, customer service, inclusivity, everything. We're going to rebuild this store from the ground up." The commitment in Darius's words was clear, and Sarah felt a surge of both responsibility and resolve as she prepared to undertake the task of restoring the store's values. Sarah smiled, a mixture of nerves and excitement in her eyes. "I won't let you down." "I know you won't," Darius replied, watching as she walked out with a new sense of purpose and determination. The future of the store now rested in her hands, and as Sarah stepped into her new role, the path ahead was both challenging and filled with promise. Later that evening, Darius found himself standing by the expansive glass window of his office, staring out at the sprawling cityscape bathed in the soft glow of countless lights. The view was mesmerizing, yet his mind was a whirlwind of turbulent emotions. Each flicker of city light seemed to echo the countless times his father had been overlooked and dismissed, experiences that mirrored his recent frustrations. Yesterday's events had been a stark reminder of how easily one could be disregarded, but today was a new beginning. Today, Darius held the reins of power, the chance to rewrite narratives and to ensure that no one else had to endure the same injustices his father had faced. As the city bustled below, Darius felt a surge of resolve. Tomorrow marked the start of real, tangible change, and he was ready to embrace the challenge with everything he had. Seated in the quiet of his office, the distant hum of the city a mere whisper against the walls, Darius's thoughts were heavy with the memory of his confrontation with Mason. It had been a necessary but emotionally draining ordeal, revealing harsh truths that were impossible to ignore. The weight of this realization was more than just a business burden. It was a deeply personal reckoning, a raw and festering wound that had been growing silently for years. The emotional toll was immense, and it transformed what had once been a corporate struggle into a profound journey of self-discovery and healing. He reached for a framed photograph on his desk, his fingers trembling slightly as he lifted it from its place. The image captured his father, Ethan Mitchell, standing tall with a radiant smile that had always been a beacon of warmth for Darius. Ethan's lessons in dignity, perseverance, and respect had shaped Darius's life, but it was only now that he began to truly understand the depth of his father's suffering. The quiet indignities and the persistent challenges his father had faced were now glaringly clear to Darius. As he set the photograph back down, a deep sadness settled over him, mingled with a fierce determination. This fight wasn't just about correcting a wrong. It was about honoring his father's legacy and confronting the shadows of the past that still loomed large. In the days that followed, Darius struggled with the weight of these revelations, knowing he wasn't yet ready to unveil the full truth to everyone. Yet he felt an obligation to provide Sarah with some insight. "Let's just say it's long overdue," he murmured, his voice filled with a mixture of weary determination and quiet resolve. Sarah accepted his words with a nod, her understanding evident as she left the office, allowing Darius to once again be enveloped by his thoughts. The silence of the room seemed to amplify his internal turmoil, each moment stretching into an endless expanse of contemplation and anticipation for the changes to come. The following week brought with it the commencement of the retraining sessions. Sarah led these sessions with a blend of unwavering commitment and empathy, guiding the staff through a series of exercises designed to challenge their ingrained biases and assumptions. Darius made it a point to visit regularly, observing the gradual transformation of the store's atmosphere. The initial resistance from some long-standing employees was palpable, their discomfort evident as they faced the new expectations imposed upon them. The process was slow and fraught with tension, but it was necessary for the evolution that Darius envisioned. During one of these sessions, Kevin, a senior salesperson with deep roots in the company, voiced his frustration. "I don't see why we're doing this," Kevin said, his posture defensive as he confronted Sarah. "This store has always catered to a specific clientele. Why should we alter our standards to be more inclusive?" Sarah met his gaze with a calm yet unyielding resolve. "We're not altering our standards, Kevin. We're expanding them. True luxury is not about exclusivity. It's about the quality that everyone deserves." Kevin's skepticism was palpable, but Sarah's steadfastness left little room for doubt. The conversation marked a critical juncture, emphasizing that the changes were imperative and non-negotiable. As weeks passed, the store began to undergo a significant transformation. Customer feedback improved, and the staff gradually embraced the new direction, albeit with some lingering hesitation. Darius frequented the store, witnessing the gradual culture shift he had always envisioned for his brand. The changes were more than just procedural, they were deeply personal, resonating with Darius on an emotional level that he hadn't anticipated. One afternoon, as Darius observed the staff interacting with customers, Sarah approached him with a beaming smile. "It's working," she said softly, her voice filled with quiet pride. "The staff is starting to understand the importance of respect and inclusivity. It's making a real difference." Darius's heart swelled with a mix of relief and gratitude. "It's because of you, Sarah. Your leadership is what has made this possible." Sarah shook her head modestly. "I'm just doing what you asked me to do." Darius's gaze grew serious as he turned to her. "No, Sarah, you're doing more than that. You're helping me build a company that my father would have been proud of, a legacy of integrity and respect that will endure for generations to come." Sarah's gaze lingered on him, her eyes softening with a profound empathy that seemed to bridge the distance between them. She didn't need to ask for more details, the unspoken understanding was enough. Darius could feel that she sensed the deeper, almost intangible connection driving his mission, a connection that tied his present actions to a legacy of unfulfilled promises and personal resolve. As he watched the store thrive under Sarah's capable leadership, the sense of his father's legacy finally beginning to settle into place, he felt an emotional weight lifting. The gaping wound, once raw and bleeding from years of unresolved grief and disappointment, was now beginning to heal. Each small success at the store a step toward closure. The day of the staff meeting arrived with a heavy, anticipatory weight. Darius positioned himself quietly at the back of the conference room, a silent observer of the unfolding drama. Employees trickled in, their faces a mix of curiosity and unease. The air was thick with unspoken questions and anxious murmurs, each whispers a reflection of the uncertainty surrounding Mason Turner's sudden departure. The store, a once familiar haven, now felt like uncharted territory, and no one knew what lay ahead. Sarah stood at the front of the room, her posture erect but her clasped hands betraying the turmoil within. She had meticulously prepared for this moment, yet now that it was here, the gravity of the responsibility she bore was almost palpable. Her eyes met Darius's, and he gave her a subtle, encouraging nod. It was a gesture of solidarity, an affirmation that she wasn't alone in this daunting task. Sarah took a deep breath, drawing on every ounce of courage she had. "Good morning, everyone," Sarah began, her voice steady but carrying the weight of her nerves. "As many of you know, there have been significant changes in our leadership structure. Mason Turner is no longer with us, and I have been appointed as the interim manager." A ripple of surprise swept through the room, a collective gasp of shock and disbelief. The confirmation of Mason's departure was a jarring reality, more impactful than the mere rumor it had been. It was a break from the known, a shift that left everyone reeling. "I realize this news might come as a shock to many of you," Sarah continued, her gaze moving across the room, trying to make a personal connection with each face. "But I want to assure you that these changes are necessary. Under Mason's leadership, this store lost its way. We strayed from the core values that this brand was built upon, and it's my job to help us find our way back. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 3 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time." She paused, letting her words hang in the air, giving them time to resonate. "This company was founded on the principles of inclusivity, quality, and respect. Our mission is to provide every customer, regardless of their background, with a truly exceptional experience. From now on, these values will guide every decision we make and every action we take." The room was filled with a mixture of skepticism and resistance. Kevin, one of the senior salespeople, crossed his arms, his face a mask of frustration and defiance. His stance was a physical manifestation of the internal struggle many felt, a reluctance to change what had long been accepted. Darius, fully aware of Kevin's influence, knew that winning him over would be critical. "We will begin retraining sessions next week," Sarah continued, her voice unwavering despite the challenge. "These sessions will focus on customer service, inclusivity, and creating a welcoming environment for everyone. Participation is mandatory, and embracing these changes is non-negotiable." Kevin's voice cut through the room, sharp and challenging. "Mandatory? Are you saying we should just abandon everything that's worked for years because of a new agenda?" Sarah's jaw tightened, but she held her composure with a steely resolve. "This isn't a new agenda, Kevin. It's a return to the core values that have always defined our company." Somewhere along the way, we lost sight of these values, and now it's time to realign ourselves with them. Kevin scoffed, leaning back in his chair, his posture radiating skepticism. And you think retraining is going to solve everything? High-end customers don't want to be treated the same as everyone else. That's the point of high-end. A few employees murmured in agreement, their voices a chorus of discontent. Sensing the rising tension, Darius stepped forward, his presence commanding immediate attention. Though he had allowed Sarah to take the lead, this was a moment that required his direct intervention. "Let me make one thing clear," Darius said, his voice calm yet imbued with a firm authority. "This company has never been about exclusion. It has never been about catering to a narrow idea of who deserves luxury. Our mission has always been to offer everyone the chance to experience it, regardless of their background. If anyone in this room disagrees with this direction, then perhaps this isn't the right place for you." The room fell into a profound silence. Kevin shifted uncomfortably in his seat but remained silent. The weight of Darius's words hung heavily in the air, creating a stillness that spoke volumes. No one dared to voice further dissent. Darius turned back to Sarah, offering her a supportive nod. It was a gesture of trust and encouragement, signaling that she had his unwavering support as she continued to navigate the challenging path ahead. The staff, once hesitant and unsure, began to embrace the new culture Darius had envisioned. Sales improved, but the real transformation was in the atmosphere. The store, which had once felt like a bastion of quiet elitism, now radiated a welcoming environment where every customer felt valued. One afternoon, as was his habit, Darius visited the store unannounced. From a discreet vantage point, he observed Sarah interacting with a customer. Her approach was professional yet warm, striking the perfect balance between elegance and approachability. The customer, a middle-aged man in jeans and a t-shirt, appeared relaxed as Sarah presented him with one of the store's high-end watches. Darius smiled to himself, gratified to see his vision coming to life, luxury without barriers. As he turned to leave, Sarah approached him at the door. "Leaving so soon?" she asked, her grin genuine and her tone cheerful. "Just wanted to check in," Darius replied. "Looks like things are running smoothly." Sarah nodded, her expression reflecting both pride and relief. "They are. It's been a lot of hard work, but I think we're finally seeing the results." Darius's smile softened. "You're doing a great job," he said sincerely. "My father would have been proud." Sarah's expression warmed further. "I think he'd be proud of you too, Darius. You've turned this company into something special." A lump formed in Darius's throat, but he managed to maintain his composure. "Thank you, Sarah." As they stood by the store's entrance, watching customers come and go, Darius felt a profound sense of peace. The store had evolved from a mere business into a living embodiment of the values his father had instilled in him, a testament to the power of inclusivity and respect. Although the work was far from finished, the future seemed brighter than ever. The next morning, the sun cast a gentle glow through the glass windows of the flagship store, illuminating the sleek marble floors with a warm light. Darius entered the store unannounced once more, taking in the transformed ambience. There was a new energy in the space, something lighter and more welcoming. Customers were greeted with genuine smiles, the kind that made them feel like they truly belonged. As Darius made his way through the store, he spotted Sarah in conversation with a customer. Her tone was warm and attentive, and the positive change was evident in her interactions. Sarah noticed Darius and, wrapping up her conversation, made her way over to him. "Good morning, Mr. Mitchell," Sarah greeted him with a smile, though a hint of nervousness lingered in her voice. "What brings you by today?" Darius glanced around, absorbing the transformed atmosphere. "I just wanted to see how things were going. It looks different." Sarah's eyes brightened. "It feels different too. The staff is embracing the changes. I think they're beginning to understand what we're trying to build here." "I can see that," Darius said, nodding approvingly. "You've done an incredible job, Sarah. I knew you were the right person for this." Before Sarah could respond, the store's door opened, and a familiar figure walked in. Darius's smile faltered slightly as Richard Coleman, Mason's former assistant, entered. Richard's gaze swept across the store, and when he saw Darius, he hesitated for a moment before approaching. "Mr. Mitchell," Richard said, his voice cautious but respectful. "Do you have a moment to talk?" Darius exchanged a glance with Sarah, who gave a subtle nod. "Of course, Richard. What can I do for you?" Richard shifted on his feet, his discomfort evident. "I wanted to discuss the store," he began. "Since Mason left, I've had a lot of time to reflect, and I realize I made some mistakes. I let his influence affect how I treated customers, and I know now that's not aligned with what this company stands for." Darius crossed his arms, his gaze fixed on Richard. He could sense the desperation in Richard's voice, the genuine regret that underscored his words. "Go on," Darius encouraged. Richard took a deep breath, his eyes meeting Darius's with a mix of remorse and determination. "I understand now that the way we treated people was wrong. I've seen the positive changes since the new approach was implemented, and I want to be part of that. I'm here to make amends and to show that I can contribute to the store's new culture." Darius considered Richard's words carefully. He could see that the man was earnest, and the sincerity in his voice suggested a real desire for change. "Thank you for coming forward," Richard, Darius said after a moment. "We're always looking to build a stronger team. If you're committed to embracing the values we're instilling here, then I'm willing to give you a chance to prove it." Richard nodded vigorously, relief and hope evident in his expression. "Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. I won't let you down." Darius nodded, then turned to Sarah. "Let's keep moving forward. There's still work to be done, but together, we're making a difference." If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 4 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. As Richard began to integrate into the new culture of the store, Darius felt a renewed sense of purpose. The store's evolution was more than just a business transformation. It was a reflection of his commitment to the values his father had cherished. The journey was far from over, but with each step, Darius was confident that the store and its people were on the right path. Richard cleared his throat, his voice quivering slightly as he spoke. "I've learned from those mistakes. I want to be part of this new direction. I know I can contribute. I just need another chance." His eyes were earnest, but Sarah, standing silently next to Darius, regarded him with a mixture of wariness and skepticism. She had witnessed Richard's behavior under Mason's leadership and struggled to believe that his sudden plea for redemption was anything more than a last-ditch effort to hold onto his position. Darius remained composed, his gaze steady and thoughtful. The echoes of past failures and broken promises loomed large in his mind, reminders of countless individuals like Mason and Richard who had only sought change when their positions were on the line. Darius thought of his father, who had dealt with similar situations with a blend of patience and firm resolve. He couldn't ignore the historical patterns that had plagued this store, nor could he afford to be swayed by empty promises. "Richard," Darius began slowly, his voice deliberate and measured, "I'm not sure if you fully grasp the extent of the damage. This isn't merely about correcting past errors. It's about rebuilding trust that's been severely compromised. Right now, I'm not convinced that you've genuinely changed." The weight of Darius's words was palpable, a reflection of the deep mistrust and the careful consideration he had to give to every decision moving forward. Richard's face contorted with desperation, his shoulders slumping slightly as he struggled to hold back his frustration. "But I have changed," he insisted, his voice trembling with urgency. "I recognize where I went wrong, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to prove myself. Please, Mr. Mitchell, just give me a chance." The desperation in Richard's plea was raw and unfiltered, a stark contrast to his previous demeanor. Darius's eyes flicked to Sarah, who stood beside him with a resolute expression. He could sense her lack of trust in Richard's words, a sentiment rooted in the dramatic transformation she had spearheaded to mend the store's culture. Introducing Richard back into the mix could potentially undermine everything they had worked so hard to achieve. Darius weighed this carefully, the responsibility of his decision heavy on his shoulders. "I'm sorry," Richard, Darius said after a long, contemplative pause, his voice calm yet resolute. "But this store needs leaders who unequivocally embody the values we stand for, without hesitation or the need for second chances. You've had your time here, and it's clear that the direction we're heading is not aligned with your past actions." His tone was firm, leaving no room for further negotiation. The decision was final. Richard's face fell, a mixture of disappointment and resignation washing over him. I understand," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for hearing me out." With that, he turned and walked out of the store, his footsteps echoing with a heavy finality. Sarah let out a quiet sigh of relief, her shoulders relaxing as the tension of the moment dissipated. She turned to Darius, her voice soft but filled with conviction. "You made the right call." The words were meant to offer reassurance, but Darius's mind was still churning with thoughts of the past and the future. "I hope so," Darius replied, his thoughts drifting to the legacy of his father. He knew that the decisions he made now were not just about the present challenges, but were shaping the future of the company and honoring the legacy left behind by his father. The weight of responsibility felt monumental, but it was also a reminder of why he had undertaken this journey. Later that afternoon, Darius sat in his office, gazing out at the New York skyline. The expansive cityscape seemed to mirror his expansive thoughts. He reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. What had begun as a desire to rectify a single wrong had evolved into a deeply personal mission. The discovery of his father's struggles at the same store had unearthed painful memories, forcing him to confront a legacy fraught with challenges and unfulfilled promises. A knock on the door brought him back to the present. It was Lisa, his assistant, stepping inside with a professional yet warm demeanor. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, "the team is ready for the event." Darius nodded, rising from his seat and adjusting his suit with a sense of purpose. Today's event was not merely a celebration of the store's transformation, but a tribute to the hard work and dedication of the staff, particularly Sarah. It was also a significant opportunity for Darius to honor his father's legacy, to show that the values his father had stood for were being carried forward into a new era. The event took place in the newly transformed store, now a space of elegance and modernity. Employees and guests mingled their conversations with a buzz of excitement and anticipation. Darius stood at the front of the room, microphone in hand, preparing to address the crowd. Beside him, Sarah exuded confidence, her interactions with staff and guests reflecting the positive change she had helped to usher in. As Darius looked out at the gathering, he felt a surge of pride and determination. This was more than a formal event. It was a reaffirmation of his commitment to the values he cherished and the legacy he was determined to uphold. "Thank you all for being here today," Darius began, his voice rich and resolute as it echoed through the room. "This store has long stood as a symbol of luxury, but over the past few months, it has evolved into something far more profound. It has become a sanctuary where individuals from all walks of life can walk through those doors and feel genuinely valued and respected. This transformation is the direct result of the hard work and dedication of every one of you." He paused, letting his words resonate and settle like a gentle wave across the audience. "But none of this would have been possible without the exceptional leadership of Sarah Moore. Sarah has embodied the core values that this company was founded on: respect, integrity, and inclusivity. She has guided this store through one of its most challenging periods with unwavering commitment and grace. Today, I am proud to announce that Sarah is not just a part of this company's history, but its future." The room burst into applause, the sound of clapping hands and cheers filling the space with a vibrant energy. Sarah's face flushed with a deep, genuine pride as she stepped forward, accepting the microphone from Darius. "Thank you, Mr. Mitchell," Sarah began, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. "It is an honor to be part of this incredible company, and I am deeply grateful for the opportunity to lead such a remarkable team. This journey has been anything but easy, but together we have built something extraordinary, a reflection of the values we all hold dear." Her words were heartfelt, each one infused with the passion and dedication she had poured into her role. As Sarah continued to speak, Darius's mind wandered back to his father, Ethan Mitchell. He thought of the sacrifices Ethan had made, the silent strength with which he had faced a world that often refused to acknowledge his worth. Darius had inherited more than just his father's unyielding determination. He had also inherited a profound responsibility to make the world a better place for future generations. The weight of that responsibility was both a burden and a blessing, one that he carried with reverence and commitment. After the event, as the crowd mingled and celebrated, Darius stepped outside to find a moment of solitude. The cool evening air was a refreshing contrast to the warmth and intensity of the store, and he stood on the sidewalk, letting the bustling city flow around him. The soft hum of traffic and distant chatter created a soothing backdrop to his thoughts. His phone buzzed in his pocket, interrupting his reverie. It was a message from his sister Maya, his ever-supportive confidante. He knew she had been watching from afar, her pride and encouragement a constant source of strength for him. Maya, Darius read aloud, "Dad would be so proud of you, Darius. I hope you know that." As he read her message, a surge of emotion welled up within him. He knew she was right. His father would be proud not only of the professional success Darius had achieved, but also of the man he had become. He had chosen to stand up for what was right, even when it was difficult, and in doing so, he had honored his father's legacy by shaping a company that reflected the values Ethan had instilled in him. Sliding his phone back into his pocket, Darius felt a profound sense of closure and accomplishment wash over him. The journey had been fraught with challenges, mistakes, and painful truths, but it had been worth every struggle. He had stayed true to his father's teachings and values, guiding the company through a period of transformation that had reshaped its very essence. As he walked back into the store, Darius looked around at the smiling faces of his staff, the customers who now felt welcomed and valued, and the warm, inclusive atmosphere that permeated the space. This was no longer just a store. It had become a vibrant community where everyone could find a sense of belonging. At that moment, Darius knew that his father's legacy was not only preserved but had been elevated. The future was bright, not just for his company but for everyone who walked through those doors. Thanks for watching. We've covered a lot today, from uncovering hidden biases in high-end retail to reshaping a brand's core values. Now, we want to hear from you. What's one key takeaway you've learned from this story that you plan to apply in your own life? Drop your thoughts and insights in the comments below. We'd love to know how you're going to use these lessons. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment, like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more content. Your support helps us continue creating stories that matter. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.